Hello, today we want to talk about quadratic equations. By the end of this class, we'll be able to solve quadratic equations using four methods: the factorization method, the completing the square method, the formula method, and the graphical method. So let's start by defining what a quadratic equation is. A quadratic equation is an equation of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now the only condition that applies here is that a cannot be equal to 0. So a, b, and c are coefficients, they are numerical coefficients of the variable x. And for an equation to be considered a quadratic equation, we always have to have an x squared component, which means a cannot be equal to 0. A can be 1 or any other number, but not 0. B and c can be equal to 0. Now, quadratic equations always have two solutions. For example, x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0. Now this is a quadratic equation, and by the solutions of this equation, we mean the numbers for which if you put in for x here, this equation will result in 0. Now let's try 1, for example. If we have 1 in this equation, this is going to be 1, because 1 squared is 1, plus 1, that's 3, and 3 minus 6 is equal to 3. So 1 is not a solution to this equation. But let's try x equals 2. Now if x is equal to 2, this equation becomes 2 squared plus 2 minus 6, and 2 squared is equal to 4 plus 2 minus 6. So 4 plus 2 is equal to 6, and 6 minus 6 is equal to 0. So 2 is a solution for this quadratic equation. But 2 is not the only solution. If we try x is equal to minus 3, now this equation becomes minus 3 squared plus minus 3 minus 6. Minus 3 squared is equal to 9. This becomes minus 3 minus 6. 9 minus 3 is equal to 6, and 6 minus 6 is equal to 0. So minus 3 is also a solution to this quadratic equation. Now, the process of finding these two numbers, which makes this quadratic equation equal to 0, is what we call solving a quadratic equation. And there are four methods to do it. And so let's start with the first one, which is the factorization method. To solve a quadratic equation using the factorization method, we'll have to go through some steps, about 4 of them. Now, the first thing we have to do is multiply the coefficient of the x squared here by the constant term here, the 6. So in this case, the coefficient of x squared is equal to 1, and the constant term is equal to 6. So 1 multiplied by 6 is equal to 6. Now the second thing we have to do is find two factors of 6, which when we add or subtract results in the middle term here of minus 5. So what are the factors of 6? We have 1, 2, 3, and 6. So how can we combine any two of these four factors to give us minus 5? We can have 1 minus 6. This results into minus 5. And we can have minus 2 minus 3. This also results into minus 5. We can choose either of this combination, but let's choose minus 2 minus 3. So all we have to do is substitute minus 5 here for minus 2 minus 3. So let's rewrite this equation. Now this equation becomes x squared minus 2x minus 3x plus 6 equals 0. So all we've done is split up minus 5 into minus 2 minus 3x from here. And then we can go ahead and factorize. To factorize, we take the first two terms, x squared minus 2x. Now x is common to both terms here, so we write x also outside of the bracket. Now, x squared divided by x is equal to x, and minus 2x divided by x is equal to minus 2. We take the next two terms, minus 3x and 6, and here we have minus 3 to be equal to both terms here. So minus 3x divided by minus 3 is equal to x, and 6 divided by minus 3 is equal to minus 2. If you're doing the factorization method correctly, at the end of this step, you should have the same terms in these two brackets. They should always be the same. Now the next step is to further factorize, and by that we take the similar term here, that is x minus 2, and we write that down, and then we take the outside terms here and also classify them together, equals 0. Now we know that anything multiplied by 0 is equal to 0. So if you have two terms, a multiplied by b equals 0, what you're saying is that either a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. One of them have to be equal to 0, because if one of them is equal to 0, then anything multiplied by 0 is equal to 0. So if we apply that to this set of equation as well, it means that either x minus 2 is equal to 0 or x minus 3 is equal to 0. So if either of them is equal to 0, then one of them, the multiplication of both of them have to be equal to 0. Now all we have to do is make x the substituted formula here, and then we can get our final answers. So if we add 2 to both sides here, we have x plus 2 plus 2. This cancels out this, and x is equal to 2. For this side, we add 3 to both sides. This cancels out this. So we have that x is equal to 3. So our final answer is that either x is equal to 2 or x is equal to 3. And these are the final answers. These are the solutions for this quadratic equation. And you can try it out if we swap x for 2 in this equation. Let's have a test here. That will be 2 squared minus 5 multiplied by 2 plus 6. 2 squared is equal to 4. 5 multiplied by 2 is equal to 10. That's minus 10 plus 6. So 4 minus 10 is equal to minus 6. And minus 6 plus 6 is equal to 0. And so we know that this is correct. If you do the same for x is equal to 3, you find that you will also get that the equation adds up to be 0. And that's how you solve a quadratic equation. Now let's try another example using the factorization method as well. So this is another example. And in this case, the coefficient of x squared is not equal to 1. But we do the exact same thing that we did before, which is the first thing we do is multiply the coefficients of the x squared components by the constant term here. And in this case, 2 multiplied by 2 is equal to 4. And the next thing is we find 2 factors of 4, which when we add or subtract gives us 3. So what are the factors of 4? We have 1, we have 2, and we have 4. Now, two numbers here we can combine to give us 3 is 1 and 4. So how do we do that? We can have minus 1 plus 4. Now, minus 1 plus 4 will result into 3. So let's substitute this for plus 3 in this equation. And this equation will become 2x squared minus x plus 4x minus 2 equals 0. Now all we've done is split 3x into minus x plus 4x, which is minus 1 plus 4 here. And then we go ahead and factorize. So to factorize this equation, we take the first two terms here. Now x is common to both terms here. So we write x outside of the bracket. 2x squared divided by x. This x cancels out one of the x here, leaving us with 2x. So we have 2x. And minus x divided by x will result in minus 1. Then we go to the next two terms here. Plus 4x minus 2. Here, 2 is common to both terms. 4x divided by 2. 2 cancels out 4 here to give us 2. So leave us with 2. So we have 2x remaining. So this is going to be 2x. And minus 2 divided by 2 is equal to minus 1 equals 0. Like what I said before, if you're doing factorization method right, you should always have the same term in two brackets at this step. Now the next step is to write down the common terms here, which is 2x minus 1, and then you write the terms outside of the brackets here, which is x plus 2 equals 0. Now at this point, we know that anything multiplied by 0 will result in 0. So either of these two terms has to be equal to 0. So either 2x minus 1 is equal to 0, or x plus 2 is equal to 0. So all we have to do now is solve for x, and we have our two solutions to this equation. For this case, if we add 1 to both sides, we have plus 1 plus 1. So minus 1 cancels out plus 1. And 2x is equal to 1. Now if we divide both sides by 2 here, 2 cancels out 2 here. So our final answer is that x is equal to half. Now in this case, all we have to do is subtract 2 from both sides. 2 cancels out 2 here, and we have that x is equal to minus 2. So our final answer is that either x is equal to half or x is equal to minus 2. And I would advise that after you solve factorization method, if you have the time in an examination or a test, you always carry out a test to see if your solutions actually make the equation equal to. So let's do a final example to really drive home the point. Now we repeat all the steps we had done for the previous two examples. And the first step is to multiply the coefficient of the x squared term here by the constant term here. And that is 6 multiplied by 4. This is equal to 24. Now we write out the factors of 24. In this case, it's a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. We have 8. We have 12. And then we have 24. So what two numbers do you think, if we add or subtract here, will be able to give us minus 5? Well, I think without wasting time, 8 and 3 would be our answer. 8 and 3. So if we have 3 minus 8, this would definitely result into minus 5. So let's substitute 3 minus 8 for minus 5x here. And so this new equation will become 6x squared plus 3x minus 8x minus 4 equals 0. So the next step is to factorize this equation. Now let's take the first two here. We have 3x is common to both terms here. So if we have 3x outside the bracket, now 6x squared divided by 3x, that will result into 2x. And 3x divided by 3x here will be equal to plus 1. I forgot to mention, if you need more explanation, an in-depth explanation onto factorizing polynomials, please see my video on polynomials. Now let's continue. To factorize minus 8x and minus 4, we have the minus 4 is common to both terms here. So 8x divided by minus 4 will be equal to 2x. And minus 4 divided by minus 4 is equal to 1. This is equal to 2. Now the next step is that we write out the common terms here, which is 2x plus 1 And then we write the terms out of the bracket, outside the bracket here, which is 3x minus 4 equals 0. Now at this point, we know that one of these two have to be equal to 0, has to be equal to 0. And so we can write that as 2x plus 1 is equal to 0, or 3x minus 4 is equal to 0. Now all we have to do now is solve for x, and we have our answers. Now to solve for x here, we subtract 1 from both sides. Now if we subtract 1 from this side, we have 2x. We're left with 2x. And if we subtract 1 from this side, we have minus 1. Now to leave x on this side alone, all we have to do is divide both sides by 2. And that would leave us with x here. And that will be minus 1 divided by 2 here. For this side, if we add 4 to both sides, 4 cancels out here and we're left with plus 4 here. So that will be 3x equals 4. And to leave x on this side alone, we divide both sides by 3. So x is equal to 4 divided by 3. So our answers to this quadratic equation is minus half and 4 divided by 3.